Nothing on the Bonnell Foundation's Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast should be considered medical advice. Medical advice can only come from your CF physician. Cystic fibrosis can be a devastating diagnosis, but living with the disease can bring positivity and a new appreciation for each day. From the Bonnell Foundation in Detroit, Michigan, it's the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast, sponsored by Viatris, Genentech, and Vertex. Here's your host, Laura Bonnell.
The Rare Disease Advisory Council, which we will refer to as the RDAC, has passed in at least 25 states so far. This is a bipartisan effort to give voice to the 7,000 plus rare diseases, which includes cystic fibrosis. The RDAC would be housed in the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, the Bonnell Foundation, along with MichBio, National Organization of Rare Disorders, RDII, and a coalition of rare disease advocates has been trying to get the RDAC passed for years. And here's a broad overview. In 2020, the RDAC started as Bill 5465 and didn't make it very far. Then in 2021, the coalition, the Bonnell Foundation, RDII, NORD, and Dr. Rapundalo of MichBio got together, and our bill sponsor, Representative Cara Clemente, attempted to get Bill 4654 passed, but it didn't make it through the Senate Health Policy Committee, due in part to some misunderstanding about what the RDAC is. Our thanks to Representative Clemente for getting us started. The bipartisan Bill 4167 got new life when Representative Jason Morgan became the bill's sponsor. New to the legislature, he has come with enthusiasm, knowledge, and his personal story of being diagnosed with Becker's muscular dystrophy. We're very hopeful that the bill will pass the Senate Health Policy Committee in the fall and continue to the entire Senate and then get to the governor's desk and get signed there. The appropriations for this bill is $200,000. RDAC will simply give us a voice. It will include 21 people who represent the insurance company, pharma, social workers, doctors, patients, nonprofits, geneticists, nurses, and the bioindustry. And joining us today are Dr. Stephen Rapundalo, president of MichBio, and Representative Jason Morgan, who represents Ann Arbor. So welcome, both of you. It's great to have this conversation.
Glad to be here.
So glad to be with you.
So glad you're both here. And Dr. Rapundalo, we'll start with you. Please just briefly tell us the work that you've done in the science world so people know, where your background comes from, and then, tell us what MichBio is all about.
Sure. As you said, I have a science background, trained mostly in the cardiology, cardiovascular therapeutic area. Spent my first career, some 20 years, in pharmaceutical research, where I helped bring a variety of drugs to the market. Most notably, ones that people might recognize are like Lipitor or Eliquis and a host of others. And after that sort of first career, I switched over to running MichBio. And MichBio is the statewide life sciences or biosciences industry association, meaning we represent the interests of a variety of sectors, most notably pharmaceuticals, medical devices, diagnostics, so much of the healthcare industry that provides the treatments and technologies and drugs for patients. In the course of that, we also sort of sit at the interface between the industry and patient groups like yours, as you well know, because a lot of issues that patient groups have are common to what we and our companies also have. And so there's a natural synergy to bring, all the stakeholders together. And that's kind of the role that we play, sort of a chamber of commerce, and one that, at least for your purposes, focuses a lot in the advocacy and public policy side.
Which is fantastic. And Representative Morgan, as I mentioned in the intro, you were diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. And before we get to that story, why don't you tell us, you're new in the political world, but kind of take us on, your career and what you started and then why you decided to get into politics.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm new to the state legislature. I was elected in November of 2022, and it has been a thrilling and exciting 8 months so far here. It feels like 8 years, if not more. I grew up in rural Michigan and moved to Ann Arbor about 12 years ago, actually almost 12 years ago to the day, to work for former Congressman John Dingell. And after working for him for a couple of years, continued on in working in the community here in Washtenaw County, eventually ran for county commission, served as chair of the Board of Commissioners here, and throughout my career ended up working for 5 different members of Congress. So the time when the state house seat opened up that I lived in here, I felt pretty prepared to jump into this work and to really try and keep doing what I can to help the community that I really enjoy living in.
And I'm so glad that you did, because like I think I told you when I first met you, I could feel your enthusiasm for this rare disease community and just your enthusiasm for the job and for the people that you represent. It's heartwarming. It's wonderful. And in talking to you about rare disease issues, you got everything that I said because you experience it. You are living it. You know all the challenges that we face. So getting you to sponsor this Rare Disease Advisory Council was just perfection, really. You're the perfect person. We're really grateful. Why don't you talk a little bit about your diagnosis and your disease, how that's impacted your life as you move forward as a state rep? Absolutely.
Well, and first I want to mention, I was thrilled and honored to grab this piece of legislation and continue moving it forward. This is something that former Rep. Cara Clementi had been working on previously. And Stephen, who's on this call or this chat here with us, had been keeping me up to date regularly because he knew it was something I was very passionate about as somebody living with a rare disease. So to have the opportunity to carry that ball forward is wonderful, and we are going to get this darn thing done no matter what. But really looking at kind of where I come from in this space, my rare disease here, I was diagnosed with Becker's muscular dystrophy when I was 13. For a lot of folks who are familiar with muscular dystrophy, but for those who aren't, it's a disease that impacts your arms, your legs, most importantly, your heart. And so it is something that weighs on me pretty heavily each day. Growing up in rural Michigan with an undiagnosed rare disease in a small town was really tough. I knew something was wrong when I was younger, but for a long time didn't know exactly what it was that was wrong with me. I was having sore muscles, sudden and kind of debilitating muscle pain that I really couldn't explain. And every few weeks, I attended another doctor's appointment, had another test and another treatment. Nothing seemed to work until the point when my doctor connected my symptoms with Becker's muscular dystrophy a couple of years into that process. And so that is kind of just the beginning of my story there, but is ultimately what drives me to do the work that I'm doing today. Having this disease and knowing that my life expectancy is only 42 years old gives me this sense of purpose in the work that I'm doing, that if I'm not doing something good and useful to help people, that I don't want to be doing this work. And so my options are fairly limited with that mindset of I either need to get things done and make sure we're helping people or go do something else with my life. And I have no plans to go do anything else with my life at this point. So it's a very strong driver to continue pushing forward. And this is one big way that I feel like I can make a difference, working with certainly you, Laura, and Stephen, and the many other folks who've been helping us along the way.
And I think it's really important because you can relate to others. And the other thing you said, as I mentioned in the introduction too, but a lot of people got us to where we are right now. So it's a huge group of people making this, RDAC happen and trying to get it to the finish line. You're a Democrat. This is a bipartisan bill. Are you finding that both Republicans and Democrats can work together on the RDAC and make it happen?
I am. What I found immediately in working on this bill was that almost everyone has a connection to someone with a rare disease in either in their family or their close circle of friends and has been impacted by one of the thousands of rare diseases. So it's felt easier than many issues in Lansing to find common ground on this issue and have folks who say, yeah, I think this really could help if we had a council to help advise and provide resources for all these different diseases. So it's been really exciting to work in something so bipartisan.
That is wonderful. And as you know, so there's 1 million people in Michigan with a rare disease. And Dr. Rapundalo, how have you felt like the process has gone? Like, I feel like we're constantly learning what we have to do, who we need to talk to, and how to keep it moving, which you're an expert at. And both of you are, obviously.
Well, thank you for that. There are many times where I don't feel that way, because it is a challenge. I mean, you're forever educating. And like Rep. Morgan indicated, every legislator has his or her level of understanding or attachment to rare disease, and you're having to find where their interest lies and impress upon them what the RDAC can mean for patients and patient groups. And at the end of the day, it's really about giving the rare disease patients and their caregivers a voice, right? Because as the rep has alluded to, there's well over 7,000 rare diseases. Many of them are very tiny populations by definition. They don't have large organizations with all sorts of wherewithal to call attention to their condition and their plight and their challenges. And so the RDAC is meant to bring, together that collective voice, along with having other important stakeholders like researchers and healthcare providers, to ensure that whatever's being discussed at the table has the right people around the table who can bring that expertise and translate it into policy recommendations or bring it to the attention of the right people at agencies like the Department of Health and Human Services or others. And that's really what the RDAC's all about at the end of the day.
I was so touched when we were testifying at the the House Public Health Committee meeting, and other representatives were talking about the rare disease or the disease that they had, you had brought up what you were dealing with, Representative Morgan, and then everyone else wanted to say what impacted them. I thought that was so beautiful because it really represents our entire community. Don't you feel that, Rep. Morgan? You must have been so touched by that.
I do, because sharing a diagnosis that you have is very personal. And so it was especially impactful to hear other representatives sharing their stories of diseases that nobody would ever know they have outside of their close family if they weren't willing to share that publicly. And so in many ways, through this work, we've been able to raise more awareness of just how many people are impacted by the multitude of different rare diseases, which is really impactful for people to not feel alone or that they should be afraid of sharing this part of who they are. And so it's been, really encouraging to see and feel that.
And I think one of the things that was so welcome by everyone also was your willingness and the way that you beautifully answered any questions. Like, that's the point. If you aren't clear about what the RDAC is, ask a question, right? Get an explanation. And I thought you did that beautifully every time that you spoke. What do you find right now, maybe what the biggest questions are about the RDAC? And do you find that there is a good understanding now of what it is?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for those kind words. I think the ability to answer things sort of naturally and just honestly makes for the best answers. Whether it's the most polished answer or not, at the end of the day, I never know. But what everybody will always get from me is a very straightforward and honest and sincere answer. And you can only do that if you are truly touched by the work. It's just a testament to how important it is for people with disabilities and to know the space to be represented in our elected offices and in the rooms where decisions are being made. Not just those with the diseases, but their families and caregivers and those who've seen and felt the impact in the real world. I think that has been really powerful. I think I lost track of your other question.
That's okay. No, that was, I appreciated it. I just wonder, are you still getting questions now? And do you think that both Democrats and Republicans, do they understand what the RDAC is intended to do?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. And certainly Steven can add to this, Dr. Rapundalo. His proper, but I think the big question is, will this do anything? Will it be impactful? Will it be effective? And I think we know the answer is absolutely yes, because we won't let it not be. But those are the big questions, is making sure that if we create something, it will actually have the effect and the impact that we're hoping for. And you could ask that about a whole bunch of different things that we do as the legislature, because a lot of time you don't know what all something can do until you create it and watch it start working. And so there are very clear answers around the Rare Disease Council, in that we need to know more about these diseases. We need to have greater awareness. We need to have experts included in the conversation, and those experts talking with the policymakers in the Department of Health and Human Services in the state to explore ideas of how to help. Really, the questions that are out there about will this do anything, in my mind, lend me more credibility to why this is so important and why it's so needed, because so many people have such a lack of understanding of what the experience is like for people with rare diseases.
Absolutely.
I would add that, we obviously can learn best practices and from lessons from other states who have already enacted an RDAC, some more than 24. And we know in several cases, some of them have gone back to the drawing board and made adjustments based on their own learnings and have tried to improve those bodies so that, in fact, they do bring value to the patients and the, rare disease community that it's intended for.
I would agree. I mean, it's just an informational piece, so people would not be making decisions. It would be giving information to legislators to make decisions based on the information that they're giving, correct?
Right. Yeah.
And there's a lot going on in Colorado now. We don't have to get into it, but the prescription drug boards there are trying to make decisions on specialty medications. It's just information. Like, that would be an example of something that you could talk to legislators about if they were deciding on something like this. How would you advise the community, whether they're part of the coalition or not, as far if they wanted to get involved or maybe understand the RDAC better?
I think there's a really important role for the community to play right now in reaching out to their legislators to tell them they are supportive of creating a rare disease council and to ask them to help move that forward, particularly state senators, because we've passed this in the House. So reaching out to state senators would be really, really important. And I think I would initially say kind of those who are on the Health Policy Committee, but really I think it's all of the state senators. One of the things I've learned as a legislator is if you have a bill that's out there and people are talking about it and your colleagues are hearing about it, they'll reach out to you and ask questions, say, hey, I'm hearing a lot of constituents concerned about this bill you have. How can I help support it? And so there are always avenues for me to respond to them and say, well, here's where it's at. Here's where you can push. Maybe you share a Senate district or a House district with a senator who can make an impact on this. Can you reach out to them and ask them for their support and ask them to help push it forward? So I think reaching out to legislators expressing support for this would be critical. Email is usually best. Phone calls are okay. But I always find email works really well, or letters work too. If you have people want to write handwritten letters, we certainly read those too. And
there seems that there is reception on the Senate side, that they're interested, engaged, and, willing to work with everybody. So that is a really good sign. Dr. Rapundalo, would you agree there?
Yes, and in particular, even like the Senate Health Policy Committee, there are those who were previously in the House and now are in the Senate and on the Health Policy Committee who voted for this RDAC bill previously. So we're encouraged, but Rep. Morgan is absolutely right. This is going to require a grassroots campaign, if you will. And so the letter writing, the email writing to your senator in particular is needed so that we can get a groundswell of support and get this across the finish line sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. And we will have information in show notes, too, for people to get a hold of Representative Morgan as well. Whoever wants to answer on appropriations, the $200,000, what does that go to if people are concerned or interested in that? And why is that necessary?
Yeah, I can certainly answer that one. We were very, very pleased to see $200,000 included in the budget, state budget for the Rare Disease Advisory Council. So that is huge. That's really impactful. That'll help the department staff and support the council when it would be created. And actually, to one other note I want to add on that is Representative Christine Morse from the Kalamazoo area chairs that committee in the State House, the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Health and Human Services. If anyone lives in her district or just wants to send her emails thanking her for her support to fund the Rare Disease Advisory Council, I think that would be really helpful and important and special because she pushed very, very hard to make sure that that funding made it into the budget. And that is no small feat. She did that because she believed in creating this council and was very passionate about it herself. I only found out kind of later in the process that she was working to do this, and she just said, hey, it's the right thing to do. I want to make sure this is funded. So I just want to let you know I'm working on this. And so that is truly amazing. So she's a great ally. Folks want to thank her for that. Legislators very rarely get thanked for the good things they do. Usually we get folks yelling at us about the things that somebody didn't like that we did. So whenever there's an occasion to send some thanks, I think thanking Christine Moore should be great.
That is great. Really good information. And we'll get her contact information in the show notes as well. But that is really important. And can you also talk about how many people would potentially be on the RDAC and who will be included? It's a wide variety of people that will represent everybody in the state.
You know, it's the number has sort of moved around. I think the latest version, if I remember correctly, is like 21 or 22. But it's meant to have, 3 patients, caregivers, patient groups. And then in addition, it's supposed to have representatives from both an organization like ours, as well as somebody from a company who works with rare disease patients in terms of having treatments for certain rare diseases. It also would include healthcare providers like nurses, an MD, a physician, in both cases, who work with rare disease patients, a researcher, a geneticist, somebody from the hospitals and the insurance world. So again, it's meant to provide from the health ecosystem, those that provide or developing the treatments, and then, of course, first and foremost, the patients and those that care for them.
Anything you wanted to add, Rep. Morgan, about that?
No, I think Dr. Rapundalo covered it. The important point for us was to make sure that a lot of different voices were at the table, both those directly impacted with rare diseases and their families, but also those who are the experts in trying to help in this area. And I think the final composition that we came up with, working with you all, I think was a really phenomenal way to make sure everybody's voices are included at the table.
I think it's great. I just think the potential is it's going to be such a beautiful thing when you have all these people. And not only that everyone would be working with legislators, but you would then get to know each other. Patients working with the insurance companies and getting to know them and getting to know the doctors and the geneticists. I think that whole group will be such a wonderful mix of people that will really learn from each other. I mean, don't you agree? I think part of the problem is if I don't know what you have to do on your side, if you're the insurance company or if you're pharma, and you don't know what I'm dealing with as a mother of 2 daughters with CF, I think it really gives a good perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed, it does. And that's precisely why what the RDAC was meant to be built for. It's precisely that.
So we're looking at the fall, right? It looks like it will be the fall when it goes before the Senate Health Policy Committee.
That is the hope, yes. So we think we will be able to move this bill this fall in the legislature. And so the advocacy for the senators could really start any time, just asking folks in a friendly way to say, hey, this is a great thing. Here's how it would impact me as your constituent. And please, I hope you all support this moving along through the process.
Yeah. I'm really hopeful. We've all been working on this for years, so really hopeful that it will go through this fall, and very optimistic about it because I think we're hearing good things from everyone, I would say. Representative Morgan, do you have anything else that you want to add about the RDAC coming up or any other hopes that you have in regard to this Rare Disease Advisory Council?
I think I would just add, that I really do think this is such an important effort to make sure that we can create a council here in Michigan to support all of us and our families and those who are impacted by rare diseases. We can do it. This is a realistic effort. We're further than we've ever been. And I think that it's just so personal for me that it's sometimes hard to talk about because I just think about what a difference an extra few years or a couple of years of knowing about my diagnosis could have meant for me and what impact that could have had on my life. And so I think of everybody else who's dealing with their own rare disease and whichever way that impacts them and their families and how much we can help them. So I just hope that we can finally make this happen and continue to do this great work together because there's just so much good that we can do.
I would agree too. I mean, we've talked to both sides, Republicans and Democrats. Everybody has something. Everybody, like we've said earlier in this, either knows somebody with a rare disease or has a rare disease themselves. And Dr. Rapundalo, your hopes on the fall and thoughts about what we need to do?
Again, as we've said before, I think we're all encouraged, but I'll believe it when I see it. And that means that it's going to take a lot of collective effort on all our parts and the broader, rare disease patient community to bring this together. I mean, we've got to be partners in all of this. We got to get the word out far and wide. And we too, MichBio as an organization, as you know, Laura, we welcome patient groups to interface with us. And, if they have questions, please provide our contact information as well. And we're happy to assist and support.
Absolutely. Everyone's is in there. And we encourage everybody to reach out to all 3 of us and your legislators, whoever it is, because this is really important. And politics is an interesting animal, I guess is a way to say it, but it is exciting. And when it works, it is beautiful. Is it not, Representative Morgan? I mean, you've been working on so many things, and I love seeing all your social media posts with all your success, but it takes a lot of energy, right?
Politics is, there are far more frustrating days than there are celebratory days, I guess I would say so far. Despite all the really big and amazing things that I think we are doing in Michigan right now, it is still a very tough and challenging world to work in. And so having something really good and positive like this that we can be excited about is really one of those things that keeps me going.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, let's get everybody to do something and to reach out and keep this going. We need everybody's energy and help. So thanks, both of you, for getting this message out and for working so hard on this really important RDAC.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
If you're looking for a good party, an event where you can mix and mingle with kind people, join the Bonnell Foundation on Saturday, September 9th for the Night of Hope Diamonds in the Sky event. We're going to have fun and raise a lot of money for our programs. See the ticket link in show notes or on our website. We'll see you there. The original music in this podcast is performed by Kevin Allen,
It's not complicated.
who happens to have cystic fibrosis.
We all got our worries and fears. I know it's got you frustrated, but loving you is so alright.
This has been the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast. For more information and to learn more about the Bonnell Foundation, visit our website at thebonnellfoundation.org. That's the BONNELL Foundation.org. This podcast was sponsored by Viatris, Genentech, and Vertex. It was produced by Jag and Detroit Podcasts. Follow our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now.